Identical twins. What's the craziest way which you've abused your powers of mistaken identity? I've run into people, not close friends, just acquaintances, I haven't wanted to talk to and have pretended to be my identical twin to avoid annoying small talk. Oh, I'm sorry, you must think I am. My name. We are twins. This happens a lot. I'm not a twin but had my whole class of 4th graders convinced I was, and that my twin was also a teacher and we would switch places and teach the other's class occasionally. It was hilarious hearing kids' theories on how to decide when I was me and when I was my twin. I had a friend who had an identical twin, and they both spent the first month of university they went to the same school, convincing everybody that there was actually 3 of them and that they were triplets. By the time they decided to come clean, nobody would believe them that there wasn't a third of them around somewhere. You can't trick me. I've hung out with Luke countless times. That is so freaking great. My dad is an identical twin. When he was dating my mom in college, he used to play a game with his twin. He would call my mom and partway through the conversation hand the phone off to my uncle. My uncle would see how long he could carry the conversation before he had to tap out and hand the phone off to my dad. Anyways, the first time my mom ever said I love you to my dad, she was actually talking to my uncle. My uncle faltered, and that was when my mom realized what had been happening. They must have straightened everything out because they ended up married and had me. But seriously, what a colossal strategic error on my dad's part. My brother and I had a sequence of 10 numbers memorized, so if anyone ever asked if we were telepathic we could prove we were. This was like 3rd grade. My twin brother got me a detention for his dress code violation and neglected to tell me, which resulted in me almost getting suspended. In return, I failed his French test. Savage. Ugh. My twin and I tried switching places for a day in grade school. It lasted all of 5 minutes because even though our teachers didn't catch on, her classmates knew and kept asking what I was doing in their class and where my sister was. While in Iraq, I signed all my legal rights over to my brother. That gave him legal rights to my bank account. When my family was in financial trouble, I gave the okay for my brother to take money out of my account. The bank refused to honor the legal document and would not let my brother take money out. Next day he went to the same bank with my passport and took the money out of my account. My brother went to a job interview pretending to be me. He got the job, and I've been working there for just over a year now. What a bro. Okay, I got a great one, but in typical Reddit fashion, it's my grandfather's story, not mine. My father's father had an identical twin, and they both were in the Air Force. First trick was that my grandfather was blind in one eye due to a childhood accident while running with scissors. His brother went and took his physicals for him, but they caught them just before pilot training. Fast forward, they are both active duty during World War II, and one is stationed in California, while the other is stationed somewhere at a US base in the Pacific. My grandfather, Earl, was the guy who would put pilots in their cockpit and make sure it was sealed correctly before they took off. Mind you, these pilots are flying the fastest aircraft manufactured at the time, and nonetheless, my grandfather tells them right before they leave, "I'll see you when you get there," with a wink. His brother, with the same last name, imagine Private Swenson or whatever, was the guy who would undo the cockpit for the pilots after they landed in the Pacific, and he would say to them, "Hey, you made it, I got here pretty fast," producing the most astonished look of bewilderment and amazement one could muster. They ran this joke for quite some time and even got written up in the newspaper about it later on. I thought it was such a great old joke. Hope you guys liked it. Oh my god, this one is hilarious. My identical twin died. There are some people who knew him but did not know he was a twin. When I bump into them accidentally, they always freak out. This one is incredibly sad. Sorry for your loss. I have identical twin brothers. As children they constantly called each other ugly, which they did not get, but made my mother laugh every time. They still do it today, mostly as just a dumb old joke. One of my nicknames for my twin is Ugly, some of the others are Lefty and Spare Parts. I went to a convention with 2 friends who were identical twins. They dressed the same one day, hoping to throw people off and have some laughs, which worked perfectly, at least until they got separated. Then they both ended up going around in circles using the "have you seen someone who looks exactly like me" line to try to find each other. I'm reminded of a story I saw here on Reddit about a really old man, was with his wife for like 50 years, eventually ends up passing away without ever having told anyone he had an identical twin. So his brother shows up to the funeral and chaos ensues. That would be an awesome story, like if the other old man's life is in shambles at the time he shows up and then decides to keep playing his brother, who is extremely successful and loved all over town. He fakes everything by acting hella confused about the funeral. IDK. Just a thought. Dated a girl a couple years ago that had an identical twin. They said they would switch class schedules for a day and stuff like that for fun. I was able to tell them apart due to the way they presented themselves. Everyone has slightly different facial expressions and stuff like that. For fun, my GF would leave the room I was in and her twin would come in and pretend to be her. Rarely worked. Fun game though. And no, I didn't have a threesome with them, so don't ask. Man, if you noticed you were talking to the sister, you should have played it off like you didn't. Then when your girlfriend came back, said stuff like, "Man, you've never kissed me so passionately before. That was amazing." My sister and I were handed each other's picture forms on our senior year picture day in high school. We thought it might be funny to not switch them back, take each other's yearbook schooled card pictures, and have few people know we did it. Harmless shenanigans, right? Then one day at the end of the year, after SATs, AP tests, and college applications were all over, I got called into the principal's office. This had never happened to me before, and I had no idea why on earth I would be called down, since I hadn't gotten into any trouble. I get there, and my sister has already arrived, and I'm just like, oh crap. Principal sits us down and tells us that, when cross-referencing our schooled photos and the driver's licenses we provided at the SAT, College Board found a discrepancy and was investigating the possibility that we may have taken each other's tests. I hadn't even thought about that being a possibility, and all the blood went to my stomach. My sister and I freaked out, and as calmly as we could tried to explain what we thought was a harmless prank. But he kept a straight face and insisted that if there was any possibility that we had switched tests, our scores could be invalidated. After about 10 minutes of explaining and reasoning with him about how we'd comply with any investigation but we swear we took our own tests and so on, he calmly told us it was all a joke. I felt like I was going to pass right out. He was laughing his butt off and saying things like "got you good," and reassuring us that everything was fine and that we should go back to class. Turns out that since we have family in the school district, the principal had heard that my sister and I switched and decided it would be brilliant to make us think our futures were in danger. In his defense, it was objectively a fantastic prank, and his delivery was so level and authoritative it at no point occurred to us that College Board doesn't reference yearbook photos to confirm identities. Props to him for creativity, but what goes around comes around. TLDR. Sister and I switched places on yearbook day. Our principal pranked us hard months later by making us think our life careers were in danger. Principals with a sense of humor, aren't those a rare breed? Not a twin but Asian. Back in middle school, my friend and I took each other's classes for an entire day and no one noticed. It's even easier when you have the same name as another Asian. We had 3 people with the same name in our grade in school. I think the best one I ever heard was twins who worked super ultra overtime at the same job by simply pretending to be the same person and trading off shifts, putting in a 120 hours a week or so. Super ultra mega overtime. A teacher of mine who is a triplet told us once that she took an exam for her sister that she already took and studied for, got an A for herself and an A for her sister. And the third triplet got a D because the other 2 excluded her from the scheme. Honestly, being an identical twin is not so much about cool pranks as it is responding to people who ask why are you so nice in chem class then totally ignore me when I try to talk to you in English. Or this, most common, problem. Guy, hey, what's up? Love the new hair. Internal me. Do I know this guy? I didn't do anything special to my hair. Who are you? Why can't I remember anyone is? Me. Hello, guy. How brutal was that test the other day? Right? Internal me. Maybe he's in my psych class. Wait, did we even have a test? Maybe just go along with it. Me. Totally. I am so screwed for next week. Guy. Next week? The final's not until the end of the quarter? Internal me. Oh no, he thinks I may. Should I say something? That'd be awkward. I'll look like an idiot for pretending to know him. He might get embarrassed. Maybe I can just wing it and no one will have to know I'm me. At this point in the conversation I decide if I should continue to be my twin or reveal myself. This is definitely my fault in part, because I am so bad at remembering faces. People in my classes, people at bars, people from past classes. I'll meet people on a smoke break and find out that, to my surprise, they've been sitting the next table over from me for a few weeks. Add twinliness into the mix and it's so awkward. Imagine it busy waving at me feeling all the time I get that plus a conversation. If they ask for help or make it obvious that they just want to chat, I tell them I'm the twin. My favorite story from another time this question was asked. My twin brother and I went to different colleges and didn't generally reveal to the friends we made that we each had a twin. One day a group of people approached me in the street, calling me by my brother's name and asking me if I would like to join them in the pub. I knew that my twin brother was already at the pub, so I said I'd bet them free drinks if I beat them to the pub in a foot race, even if I gave them a head start. They agreed and ran off at top speed while I stood there casually checking my watch and buffing my fingernails on my lapel, only for them to arrive exhausted and find me standing at the bar, drink already in hand. Credit to you, Lawbley. I have a twin sister. I am a guy. My little brother was born 2 years later, on the same day. However, now that we're older, we look practically identical, close enough to fool his kids, at least. When we do stuff together, we often get asked if we are twins. I answer yes. He answers no. This will need some backstory. My wife is a twin. Her sister and her both worked at the same camp. My wife worked at the camp during the school year while my sister-in-law worked during the summer when there was a lot more staff. Basically they were trading places all the time, but staff of the camp would change during those times as well. Summer staff versus not summer staff, so it was never really an issue. My wife worked mostly in the kitchen while her sister worked as a counselor. Generally the two were never seen together when they were both working there. It should also be said that my sil was often mistaken for a few other people around camp anyway, which only helped the situation in the end. At the end of the week, the groups of campers would do skits. One group of campers decided their skit would be about a machine that would multiply things. So, my sil decided to help them out. The skit came down to the campers saying that my sil was such a hard worker that she needed a clone to help out around camp. At this point the campers in this particular group knew about her twin, but most of the other campers did not. They turned on their machine and put my sil in. Out came her and a boy that had the same hair color and style, but that wasn't quite right. They got rid of the boy and put her back in. Out came a girl with different hair color, but at least it was a girl this time. Next the machine spit out a girl with the right hair color but not quite the same build. The fourth time, the machine spits out my wife. Being a nearly identical twin, this basically blew the audience away. TLDR, my wife and sil freaked out some children and even some adults with their shenanigans. I love the slow build. Most kids would have gone straight for the twin punchline, but these ones knew the tricks. What maybe you guys don't understand, and maybe some other twins can back me up here, but it's not so much tricking the teacher when switching classes as it is keeping all the other students quiet about it, since they can usually tell right away. At least for me and my brother anyways. My sister and I have picked on my partner quite a bit. We've tricked him in mostly harmless ways, but it is fun to watch his reaction. Other than that, we've always had the same schedules at school, so we haven't really taken advantage of our twin powers. I'm curious to see other responses. My sister teaches grade school and every year she comes up with a new way to prank her students and I have to go there for April Fool's Day. Stories please. I work in a locked psychiatric ward while my twin brother works in a local emergency room. According to him, he has at least 2 scary as frick psych patients come up to him saying, "Hey Earth Turtle, you crazy frick, how are ya?" And then ensues a long scary conversation that he is not me. Not my story, unfortunately, but I knew a pair of identical twins in high school who fricked with people all the time. I quickly learned how to tell the difference out of self-defense, and they always gave me grief for ruining their fun. We'll call them Steve and Dave. Anyway, here's the story they told me. At their tiny high school, they were both starters on the football team. One was the running back, and the other the fullback. For 4 years, Dave blocked for Steve, as Steve got the yards, the touchdowns, and the records. In the final game of their senior year, they switched jerseys without telling their coach, and for one game, Steve blocked for Dave. Dave set the school single game rushing record under Steve's name. Because they were blabbermouths, the story got out, and the coach was PSM for lying and for making him look like he'd put the wrong brother at running back the whole time. Comment removed due to privacy concerns. Not a twin, but I had a good friend growing up whose dad was. A group of us gals all went to the movies one night. Twin dad's daughter goes to the bathroom while we wait for her in the lobby. Wouldn't you know it, not even 5 seconds later, we see her dad in the distance holding hands with another woman. We start freaking out, thinking we've caught her dad cheating. Friend comes out and we explain the situation, ready for battle. She laughs and says, "Oh, that's my aunt and uncle." Then she goes up to them and gives them a hug. Actually, her dad was cheating, but she really hated her mother, so she was covering for him. That's why the other woman was so surprised at being called aunt whatever her name was. My twin sister and I aren't really fully able to utilize our ability, due to not living with each other for most of our lives, but we do like to have fun with it. If we visit each other's town with a new group of friends, we will switch places with one another, and always make the newcomer look like they are amazing at figuring out random tips and tricks of the city. On a more serious note, my sister and I switched places about 8 months ago in order to save her from a terrible boyfriend. My sister is too sweet to hurt a fly, but she really needed to dump this guy, so we switched places. I met up with the jerk at the bar and told him very honestly that him and my sister, couldn't be together due to his abusive nature. Not identical, but fraternal. Still both girls, which makes look more alike than not alike. We would usually say things at the same time, but that was a coincidence. When we realized this, we started doing it on purpose to creep people out, and it really creeped them out. One especially that I remember was in 8th grade. A dude always told my sister she confused her with me, so we knew that if he saw us together he would say the something in the lines of "You are totally identical." So the time comes and he says that, so we go and say at the same time, "What are you talking about? We are totally different." The look on his face was priceless. I wish I could have recorded. This doesn't really go along with abusing my powers of mistaken identity so much as going out of my way to not be mistaken as my twin sister. She dated some douchenizzle in high school who literally could not tell us apart at all. He began pursuing her, but since he was an idiot he didn't even really take the time to get to know the differences between us two. He would mistakenly hug me or be flirty or check me out or call me my sister's name, all while my twin was standing 1 foot away. It became too awkward for me to the point where I just completely ignored his presence and didn't make eye contact when he was around so that he would finally stop mixing us up. Sometimes that didn't work, so I would immediately sarcastically insult him and throw in a couple dudes and bros to solidify the fact that I was the non-romantic twin. Even then, this dip crap couldn't read the flashing signs, so I just started to turn around and just walk away whenever he approached. He eventually picked up that his twin was the one who wasn't a complete beat to him. Has it ever occurred to you that he really did know and was taking advantage of the situation? Last night I was at a bar with one identical twin, whose brother was doing his driving test so was running late. He comes in late, forgot his ID but didn't think it would matter because his obviously identical brother was there. The barman didn't believe they were twins. They literally look like the same person, and complained to his supervisor because he thought we were taking the pee. Ended up getting kicked out. Basically the opposite of the question asked, but still appropriate I'd say. Identical triplet here. I was the paper writer back in high school, while one brother took care of the sciences, and the last one helped with math tests or homework. Done it a few times in the freshman and sophomore years. Decided to end our shenanigans in the later years for academic integrity and stuff. I was the paper writer. End our shenanigans. Story doesn't check out. Finally, a question I can answer on AskReddit. My brother and I swapped classes in secondary school. The class my brother went to had the deputy headmaster of the school as the teacher. The teacher wasn't impressed when he found out afterwards. One of my high school teachers said she had her twin take and pass her driver's test for her. No one was ever the wiser. This is why we have bad drivers, people. Not me, but two twin friends of mine. One of them got an automatic red light camera ticket and they both appeared in court saying that they regularly drive the same car and that they couldn't be sure who was driving at the time, even though they really knew which one got the ticket. The court dismissed the ticket because neither could be proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. I am not an identical twin, but I am a boy and I have a twin sister, and I am often asked when I mention I have a twin sister if we are identical. I lose a little more faith in humanity every time. My brother-in-law takes drug tests for his chronic using twins so he can stay employed. Seems to work out pretty well for them. Not me, but my friends in high school. I had algebra with one twin. His brother sat in his seat while he hid under a desk in the back, in the middle of class. After having his head down the entire time, he got up and walked out. The teacher was confused and followed him out, and while they were outside, the real twin came back to his seat. When she came back, and she was so confused for about 30 seconds. Priceless. My brother got a speeding ticket. As he was pulling over, he realized he'd forgotten his wallet at home. Without thinking, I threw him my wallet. Cop shows no mercy to a speeding high school kid, so the moving violation went on my license. He had to go to traffic school though. That's awesome. I'm an identical twin and I've always thought about this exact situation. I'd do it in a heartbeat. My brother is my closest friend. I'd do anything for him. My social studies teacher in 8th grade was kind of a dong, but he had an identical twin brother and he told us a couple stories about it. When they were in high school, his brother had attention and my teacher took his place so he could go pitch for the baseball team. Cool story, but frick you, Mr. Chadwick. Classic Chad. Was friends with a twin in elementary school and they hated each other, so they would cause a lot of trouble right before school ended and then blame it on the other brother the next day, and the brother would get punished for it. Not me, but our folks. We had 9th grade science in different periods, one right after the other. The teacher was not considered very bright and was also called meathead because of it. Mind you, my twin and I were so identical that it wasn't till we were 18 and started dyeing our hair different colors that our parents could even tell us apart. The 9th parent-teacher conferences went like so. Meathead. By the way, Mr. and Mrs. Bain, are you related to the parents of Teresa Bain? Because they're scheduled to come in next. Dad, well, you see, I'm Bridget's dad, and this is Teresa's mother. Meathead. Blank stare. Dad, they're twins. Twin sisters. Meathead. Oh, I didn't know. I like your dad. Not me, but my so. They went to different colleges in the same large city. He would go to his brother's campus and eat meals on his meal plan and vice versa. Also use the gym and other amenities. My so had to be careful as his brother's was a smallish college and he would often meet his brother's professors. And one time the dean, walking across campus, and would have to carry on full conversations about topics discussed in class, etc. At least their parents got their money's worth out of their meal plans. My twin and I went to college together for 1 year. When I went on dates with girls, my identical twin, without telling anybody, would come to the movie theater and sit on the other side of the woman, just to freak her out. Spouses of an identical twin. What was your most embarrassing moment with the other twin? Dated an identical twin in college. At times, they suffered from what some call single personality syndrome. They would do everything together. All decisions were made together. Even simple things. They would wake up in the morning and say, "What are we wearing today?" Just giving some context for the story. As I said, I dated this girl in college. Her and her sister lived together. Now, the entire time we dated, her sister was single. This, more or less, made her sister the third wheel in everything we did as a couple. It was like dating both of them without the perks of dating both of them. I know what you were thinking. One time, the three of us went on a short 4-day cruise in the Caribbean. On the ship, we kind of all did our own thing. One morning, I got up and went to the gym and the girls went to breakfast. When I got back to the room I saw, who I thought was my GF, back in the bed. Thinking we had a brief moment of alone time, I climbed in the bed, spooned up behind her, started kissing her neck, and ran my hand up her shirt. She turns her head, and to my horror, I realize that it's her sister and not my GF. I quickly backed away and said OMG, I am so sorry. She took it like a champ. She shrugged, smiled, and said it was bound to happen at some point. She also alluded to the fact that this might have happened before with guys that came before me. As far as I know, she never told my GF, and I sure as crap was not going to tell her. Plot twist, it was your GF. That was a test, and that's why she broke it off. You didn't tell her. Not my most embarrassing moment, but something close. I frequent a bar every week. All the servers know me and know my husband, who doesn't come every week but comes enough that our regular waitress knows who he is. One evening husband's identical twin brother and 8-month pregnant wife go to the bar for dinner. Cue several servers giving them some intense side eye and pretty terrible, downright rude service. Brother-in-law says something like, "Huh, that's weird, twin always says they have the best service here." Pretty sure idle Ember comes every week to his wife. His wife starts laughing and comments to the server, "Hey, I think you know my husband's twin and his wife. They come here every week." The service greatly improved after that. My granddad was an identical twin. He was in the Irish Army. His twin Eddie was not in the army. Eddie's daughter got a tattoo of Eddie on her leg. It's a big tattoo of him in his full army uniform. Nobody has the heart to tell her it's not her dad. Oh my goodness, that will be a devastating day for all when she finds out. My mum's a twin. I've caught her waving to mirrors in clothing stores a number of times thinking her sister is also there. In my younger years, I'd often run to my auntie when I wanted to ask my mum something, especially when she was at our house making coffee in the kitchen or something. That's awfully sweet actually, the waving to mirrors. A guy I work with has a twin brother who lives across the country. He took a video when he introduced his 2-year-old son to his twin brother for the first time. The moment that kid saw his uncle, his eyes just got huge and he kept looking back and forth. You could see his tiny brain explode and then he just started crying. That is infinitely adorable. Poor kid must have been so confused. My husband and his identical twin were wearing similar clothes and they look the same from behind. I hugged the wrong one. Awkward, but in the end not a huge deal. Not as bad as the guy who not just butt slapped, but fully vag gripped his mother-in-law by accident. My wife and I found out that her identical twin was a stripper when a bunch of my fraternity brothers went to the strip club and all started calling and texting me to ask if anything was wrong, and if I knew where my wife was. I have twin uncles and one of their wives suggested to the other wife that they should switch beds that night and see if the twins noticed. The other wife looked at her and burst out laughing and had to explain that's not how the look-alike thing worked. When I'm over his house, I have to be very sure when I approach him from behind to hug him that I have the right one. From the back you just can't tell, lol. Been there with my wife and her sister. They don't really look at all the same but they have very similar builds. So from behind they are easy to mix up. Not S-twin myself, but my brother and I look a lot alike. To the point, when we were in our 20s, that people mistook us for each other. I was out visiting my brother and his wife. We were getting back from a day trip and his wife said she's going to take a bath, in a way that it was obvious to me that she wanted him to join her. Well, we go inside. I start emptying the car and taking stuff back into the kitchen when I hear my sister-in-law right behind me say, "So I guess I'm taking my bath alone." I just stand there trying not to laugh before answering, "I think you have the wrong brother." She and I both burst out loud laughing. Still awkward, but it was funny. I got identical twin brothers. They were arguing and one called the other a face. It was funny after he realized they looked the same. They were not Lomeo, but Leo. I taught twins. I didn't notice I was teaching twins for a month. In my defense, I can't see faces well and everyone looks the same. My mom is a twin and her poodle loves everyone, but she can't stand my mom's twin. Barks, growls, hides and bites. Only person she does this with And my aunt is a dog person. Dogs love her. Pretty certain the dog smells her different but sees the same person and is just thinking this is an imposter. Defense. He fricked my girlfriend. He later fricked the woman I thought I wanted to marry. We haven't spoken in 5 years but he comes up in conversation a lot. Like an awkward small talk when the clerk or the train ticket guy asks what brother I am and proceeds to ask how he is. Mandatory. I am not a spouse but when I was 17 I dated one from a set of identical twin girls. Their parents were of the school of thought that one must have one of whatever the other had. So as a consequence, and completely predictable, they would pretend to be the other for fun. We were swimming at a lake near the town we lived in, and they showed up in identical bathing suits, jewelry, purses, flip-flops, towels, cell phones, watches, and food. We started swimming, and as teenagers are absolutely disgusting, started to fool around. I thought I was kissing my girlfriend when she laughed, pulled away and said, "You're right, he does use too much tongue." My budding erection vanished in embarrassment, and I was so confused I wouldn't touch either of them until they agreed to drink different beverages so I could keep track. My girlfriend wasn't mad, and in butt sight being 20/20 I should have just gone with it, but I did not. I left as soon as possible because they kept alternately teasing me, in a physical sort of way, and then changing drinks. Teenage me couldn't handle that kind of pressure. So my ex-GF and her twin shared a place. I thought my ex was in the shower. The shower had opaque doors on it so you couldn't really see who was inside the shower, but you could still see a silhouette of a woman that looked just like your girlfriend at the time. Anyway, I just got there to their home and had to use the bathroom. I rushed in, did a number 2 with all the bells and whistles. She slid open the shower door and said, "Susie, WTF are you doing?" My jaw just dropped to the ground. I was speechless. Thankfully I was done. Turns out my ex was in the backyard sitting by the pool. With all the bells and whistles. Well, aren't you a pool magician? My father is a twin. My mother has gotten dirty looks from strangers that know my uncle but not daddy, and my father are twins. Thinking that we were some secret family. My aunt has attested to it happening to her as well. That's about it. It's pretty funny. My kids both kinda had their brains explode when they met my uncle for the first time. My boyfriend and his brother look insanely the same. His brother will walk around in the same slouchy position my boyfriend does when I come over, and all that really happens is I take a double take. Sometimes he shoots with the doors open and I blame my boyfriend, but it's him. I crap with THF doors open, but I am single so I have an excuse. Once I got greeted by a guy who mistook me with one of his friends. Then I met the friend. We've been calling each other brother ever since. Plot twist, you actually are. Posted it before. My ex-wife's sister stayed with us for a few months and for some reason liked to use our bathroom in the morning to get ready. One morning I walked in thinking it was my wife, lifted the towel she had wrapped around her and smacked the crap out of her butt. It wasn't my wife. In high school my BF was an identical twin. They'd do tricks at parties, switch clothes act. It was funny if you knew the trick. Or them, but everyone else was annoyed. One party me and BF's twins GF decided to get them wrong on purpose. We agreed we'd just keep going. They'd hate it. They weren't big on sharing at the best of times. We waited for the inevitable switch, and then went after them. For the first minute, they played it as they were the other, until the GF and I started to hint at a little privacy act. They stopped with that trick after that. Your all cap spelling of etc made me doubt everything I know for about 20 seconds. My sister's husband is not a twin, but him and his brother could pass as twins. She said when they first got together she walked into the kitchen and smacked his brother's butt thinking it was him. When I was in high school I was dating a girl who had an identical twin. The girl I dated went to public school. The twin however went to a smaller school. Every once in a while they would swap places. Well, I wasn't informed of when it was happening. Imagine my surprise when I hopped in my girlfriend's car in the morning, leaned over to kiss her and boom, it's the sister. I wonder if they did that on purpose or not. My mother has an identical twin. My aunt obviously. So this is a story about my aunt's spouse. Apparently scent, among many other things, has a genetic component, so an oddity we discovered in my childhood is that our family dog, a cute miniature schnauzer, was completely unable to tell my mother and my aunt apart. When my aunt would come over to visit, our dog would walk in the room, look back and forth between them and just whine for a while. The world was apparently very confusing when there were two human mommies. On the plus side, this meant when we went out of town we could just leave our dog with my aunt and the dog settled in perfectly happy. The location was strange, but human mommy was there so everything was alright. Right up until my uncle tried to get in bed with his wife. Then our dog would immediately growl, bark and try to drive away the intruder with all his miniature might. My aunt thought it was hysterical, but for some reason my uncle didn't find this quite as funny. That's freaking hilarious. My husband doesn't have a twin, but we were at a friend's wedding and we were standing around and talking to a few people. This part is important. My husband is 6 feet 0 inches and I am 5 feet 0 inches. At this point, we had a few beers and were feeling good. Out of habit, I leaned over and put my arm around my husband's back and leaned up against him. My husband jumped back, and it was then I realized that my husband had left the circle minutes ago and I had just hugged a different tall man. I've now learned to look up and make sure my husband is next to me before caressing his back. Yep, I'm 5 feet 0, husband is 6 feet 3 inches. A couple weeks ago I almost tried to kiss his sister because she's 5 minutes and 10 seconds and they were both wearing dark jeans and a red shirt. Once a certain height is met, I guess I just tune out the rest. Plus, they both have long slim athletic builds so it's hard. Not me but my neighbors. A set of identical twin guys married a set of identical twin gals. Not kidding. Kinda creepy actually, but one time they were going out on dates and both sets of twins decided to prank the other and switch. At the time they hadn't been dating long but they are now married. And anyways they ended up being with the right ones but didn't really know it for an hour or so. LOL. I hope both sets of twins have kids at the same time. Not me, but my uncle and father. They were playing tag and my father was running from my uncle. My father came across a mirror and ran for his life thinking that was his brother, my uncle. They have the best of stories but this is the only one I remember. Not a spouse but so. Briefly dated a twin when I was in my early 20s. She lived with her sister. I slept with the sister. Unknowingly, I was over, waiting for the GF to stop by. The sister let me in and then left. Well, she left, then came back, announcing she was my GF. Very early on into the relationship and we had a very good time. She left soon after because work called. I had to go in. Needless to say, when my GF actually got home, I figured it out. Sexy times ensued again. I kept the secret. We broke up soon after. Unrelated, sister immediately started texting me, so there's that. Well, that's a crappy sister. I worked with a set of identical twins for about 3 months before I knew there were two of them. They did look very identical and we all worked in the field which meant we were all wearing matching uniforms. I'd need to be at the office usually once or twice a week maximum. I'd seen Donnie talking to another guy so I knew his name was Donnie but hadn't actually worked with him directly yet. Later I did in fact work with Ronnie. I just assumed I'd heard his name wrong. Then one day at the office I walked in and Donnie and Ronnie were both there standing next to each other. Caught me off guard a bit. I casually dated an identical twin. The two of them were so similar that they were able, by switching hairstyles, which were pretty similar anyway, even fool their mother. Anyway, I had no problem telling them apart, and mine was the cuter one, in my eyes. But I was in my early 20s, so I probably tried to kiss the wrong one by accident about 30 times. I was not a good person when I was younger. Arrived at my girlfriend's house. She was doing some gardening with her headphones in. I thought it would be a good idea to sneak up on her, spin her round and plant one on her. Kissed her. Her eyes widened. She pulled away. It wasn't my girlfriend. It was her twin sister. Turns out my girlfriend set it up. She told me she was home alone, doing gardening. She watched from the window expecting to see me have an awkward conversation with her sister. Didn't actually expect me to kiss her. Girlfriend laughed about it. Her sister didn't. Left it pretty awkward between me and her sister. We're not twins, but my brother and I look so similar it's scary, and usually wear very similar clothing. He recently got married, so over the course of the past year, I have almost been kissed, been hugged from behind, almost had my crotch grabbed, and had my butt slapped and fondled countless times. It's awkward every time. I think your sister-in-law might just be into you. My husband is a twin. They are mirror, not identical, but he and his brother look and sound very different to me. They look similar enough that my dad and other people can't tell them apart because they don't like to be in the same place at the same time, so they are rarely side by side to compare. I worked in the same department as my brother-in-law. Got him hired after I married his brother. My boss for the longest time would get mad at my bill for showing up in jeans. That was my husband. Co-workers would get really confused when they saw my husband and my brother-in-law on different sides of the building. That sort of thing. Most embarrassing for me? Being asked if I'd ever had a threesome with them both. I get that question a lot. My next oldest sister was not my twin, but were often mistaken for twins. She was home from boot camp and I was getting ready for a date with my boyfriend. She was doing the bathrobe big bowl of ice cream thing in the kitchen. My boyfriend arrived. I opened the window of my bedroom and told him to come in. I was almost ready. I am upstairs in my bedroom and I hear her yelling and beating on someone. She'd been away. She never met my boyfriend. He thought it was me in the kitchen. He said, "Oh, you aren't dressed yet," and reached from behind and put his hands on her boobs. She thought she was being assaulted and started screaming and hitting him and throwing things at him. She learned some skills in boot camp. I ran downstairs and she shouted for me to call the police and he was cowering in the corner of the kitchen trying to explain. TLDR. My boyfriend thought my sister was me and ended up getting a beatdown of epic proportions. Early on when dating my wife and me her sister for the first time, they were wearing similar outfits. As we were leaving my house I turned around to lock the door, then caught up and spanked the wrong sister. Quickly realized what I had done and apologized profusely. Still get crap about it to this day 10 years later. Dating a twin. They live together and will often just fall asleep in random places around their home. I went into my boyfriend's room and saw his figure asleep, same hair, shape, etc., and crawled on in to wake him up. Needless to say, it was the twin and he laughed really hard about the whole situation, whereas I was horrified. This was near the early parts of the relationship, so it was more embarrassing than it would be today. Haha. Not twins, but my GF and her oldest sister look a lot alike. They decided to wear the same Halloween outfit at their cousin's party. He bought a huge ice luge for shots. I walked up behind her sister and whispered in her ear, "So who's doing the luge?" It was super funny and every now and then she'll do this to me. I had two girls with an identical twin. When we broke up he requested DNA tests. Both came back as his, but the younger daughter was only a 99.98% match. He swears his twin brother must be the father. I never touched his brother. He swears his twin brother must be the father. I never touched his brother. So you think? I posted this last week in another thread, but it fits better here. One time we went to play laser tag, seniors in high school. I was on a different team than both my GF and her twin sister. I ran up behind the twin, turned her around, picked her up by her butt and kissed her. Whoops. She and I never mentioned it to anyone. There was definitely a point where I realized it was the wrong twin, and that point came before the point where we stopped. I've read this last time you posted it. Man, I spend way too much time on this website. My sister and I are a year apart, but we seem to have identical voices. We can tell us apart, but no one else can, and move the same. I walked into her house and was doing stuff in her kitchen. Her husband was busy in another room and yelled over that we should go upstairs for some sexy times before your sister gets here. I politely declined. My sister and I thought it was hysterical. Brother-in-law was horrified and embarrassed for ages. Not identical twins but a look-alike. My aunt had just gotten married and they'd stopped at a hotel for their honeymoon. Well, they were in the lobby and she saw her husband facing the other way and she went up behind him and hugged him and whispered, "Don't you think it's about time we went to the room?" in a really seductive manner. The guy turns around. Not her husband. Orco Taco. Orco Taco has to be my new favorite saying, "Thank you, kind stranger." When I was in high school, I started dating a guy. I saw him in the hallway one time and ran up and gave him a hug. He responded with, Hey, then the guy I was actually dating walked up to us. That's how I found out he had a twin. I made really quick friends with a guy in 7th grade at art school. We hung out all the time and I knew he had 2 brothers who went to the regular high school in the district, so I never met them. About 8 months into our friendship I was invited to his mitzvah. I told him I always forget which one is for boys or girls, bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah. He said bar for boys, bat for girls, but his would be a b'nai mitzvah for him and his twin. I knew him for almost a year before learning one of his brothers was a twin. A bit late to party, but a bit of a double whammy for me. Me and my brother sound the same. Even our mom could not tell us apart. Let's call us A and B. In our school days I had a friend whose big brother also used to be my big brother's friend. Let's call them X and Y. A is friend with X and B is friend with Y. What we didn't realize is that those 2 brothers also sound quite the same. Cue the old rotary phones. X calls looking for me. A. B answer the phone. X recognized the voice as A. B also recognized the voice of X as Y. They both chats and makes up important plans about when and where to meet. It was really awkward when my big brother showed up to hang around with my friends without me. Not a twin, but I took a scuba diving course with 8 other people, all strangers to me. 2 were a couple, and the girl looked nothing like me by face, but we had similar hair and similar body shapes. We wore wetsuits to dive, so then we were all wearing the same thing. While standing on the boat looking out over the water, the boyfriend came up behind me, put his arm around me, and came in to kiss my face. Then when he saw my face, stopped suddenly and apologized, and we started laughing. He said, "Don't tell Emily I did that." There was an upside to us looking alike. We have a DVD of our dives, and with the masks on we look the same, so it looks like we each have double the camera time. Not a spouse, but I am an identical twin. My sister and I like to mess with my boyfriend sometimes. Like for example, I'll be holding his hand and while he's not paying attention I'll switch my hand to my sister's and see how long it takes him to notice. It gives my friends and his friends a good laugh. This one time, I was off getting lunch or something and my sister comes over to his table since her friends sit there as well, and he hugs her from behind. Eventually he realizes it's not me, but he just plays along with it out of embarrassment. I was kinda mad at first, but I just laughed it off, and to be fair, she was wearing my jacket so it wasn't his fault entirely. We still laugh about it. Only children of Reddit. What is something that people with siblings don't understand? Relationships are hard. I've always envied people who had not just siblings, because, yeah, learning to have another person in your space is hard, but siblings of the opposite gender. Growing up with an understanding of how the opposite gender thinks, feels about their body, about friendships, how they deal with fears and insecurities, and react to power struggles among their peers. All that crap is a complete freaking mystery to only children, and it's a complete mind frick when you run head on into it in your first relationship. There's no person of approximately my age in my family. I've got one cousin, but she's 20 years older than me, so I've always perceived her like another aunt. Her children on the other hand are 10 and 15 years younger than me, and we don't even meet much. Because of that I kinda cannot grasp the concept of having a non-hierarchical relationship with your relatives, or basically having a relative who's also a buddy of yours. When your parents have a huge fight, you have to sit through it all by your own. There is no one to distract you from that or who shares your agony. I'm curious if other only children were very sensitive. I definitely got a big shock going into school and encountering the cruelty of children for the first time. Having been raised by a single loving mother makes you a pretty big target for bullying when you're that naive. I'm still super sensitive. If someone yells at me or gets mad at me, I'll probably cry. I never really got into trouble as a kid, so I'm not used to people being mad at me. I'm only 20, so I'm hoping I'll eventually grow out of this. I've never been punched or hit or kicked. I think for people with siblings that's surprising because siblings often get physical in their arguments. Same. Resulted in me getting straight up slapped across the face by goddamn Courtney next door for using all the yellow chalk. I was making a baby chick, that's the color, and I was so stunned I just apologized and left. Speaking strictly for myself, I desire the lasting relationships you have with your siblings and seek them out in my social setting, with very limited success. If you have trouble with your parents, you don't really have someone to talk to who is that close to your parents as you are and who understands like you do. So it is only you who has to deal with your parents' frustration of life, their disappointment in you, their anger because you don't live your life like they wanted you to do. Need more answers like this. This is what feels socially isolating, not the mere lack of a sibling. Wife and I are both only children. Net result, our kids do not have any aunties, uncles or cousins, and we had a big family in part because we were only children. How your friends become your siblings, but for your friends with siblings you don't become theirs. Growing up, and still, I have a core group of friends. One is an only child and the others all had brothers and sisters. I feel closer to this set of friends than almost anyone else after 25 plus years, even my husband, but I'm always aware that they have siblings who they are closer to than me. For me that's the loneliest part. Case in point, when I got married they were all bridesmaids in my wedding. But when they got married I wasn't a bridesmaid in any of their weddings because they kept it family only for the participants. They had absolutely every right to have their weddings be precisely what they want, and it was something I felt very aware of. You're breaking my only child heart right there. So true. Even my cousins who I grew up with as siblings leave me out and it hurts. Forever an island. The fear of moving too far away because if something were to happen to either parent, there is nobody else to be there the way you can. Especially hard as an only child with split parents. That if we marry another only child, our children will have zero cousins, aunts, or uncles. The pressure from family to have kids and to have a family of your own is quite high, especially if you have other plans. That when they both go you are truly alone. I don't currently have a partner and my father passed 2 years ago. It's just my mother left. I don't speak to my family that live in the same state, so if when my mother goes and I'm still single then I'm it. I have friends, great friends, but as for family, mum is it. Sometimes I say the words my sister or my brother out loud because it feels so strange, because as an only child, I'll never be able to say that. I joined a sorority in college and it was really weird saying sister. It's still weird years later. I'm 30 and an only child. Spent the last 14 years helping the family look after sick and dying relatives because we were all they had. Nursed my father, 2 grandmothers and grandfather through cancer, dementia and old age. Cleaned things and seen things no grandchild should ever have to. Even one sibling would have made this whole process much easier. For any parents reading this, just 2 bits of advice. 1. Your child will want and need time to just enjoy life and cut loose without a purpose. Give this to them but let them know you're close if needed. 2. Think about your own future. My mother is essentially a shut-in aside from 1/2 weekly grocery trips since my father passed. No matter your age, try to keep your independence as long as you can and start a payment plan for your own funeral. You can pay it off over 20 years and it won't bankrupt your kids. Watching my friends and cousins fight with their siblings was terrifying. It was a great relief to return to my books and video games. Now I'm older, I've realized that I will be alone when they are gone. Also, when the time goes and one parent dies, I will be nearly all the other one is left with. I don't feel adult enough to have to deal with that. My favorite board game is Clue and Battleship. Imagination lets me play other board games by myself, except those 2. When you become an only child as an adult, be prepared for never-ending be careful lectures. My mom must think that I'm an idiot now. It's like, I'm just checking so see if the new season of that show is on Netflix yet. Well, be careful. May or may not be a slight exaggeration. I need my alone time. I'm not being antisocial. I'm not a hermit. I had 20+ years of keeping myself entertained and it's exhausting to have constant chatter in the background now. Sometimes I just want to be alone with my thoughts. When I got to college, and even after college, I found it difficult to have roommates because I was used to things being just my way in my living space, as I hadn't had to share that space with other peers for years while growing up. It took me a long time to learn to cohabitate with others. You are both the golden child and the scapegoat. When you do good, praise rains upon you. When you frick up, you get their undiluted wrath. I'm an only child and an only grandchild, on both my mother's and my father's side, and it's not like my parents were only children. Both have siblings who married, so I have 8 aunts and uncles but no first cousins. It made for a very different upbringing because all of our holidays and family gatherings, there was no kids table. I sat with the adults and had to have discussions with adults all the time, which I believe helped me intellectually, but there were so many times where I would just want to be a kid. It's kind of ironic. I would get lots of toys at Christmas and my birthday, but never had anyone to play with them with. As for what people don't understand, many people have already touched on this, but just the immense pressure of expectations. Also, every conversation you're the only millennial who now has to speak for an entire generation in front of 10 adults. Getting in trouble and not having someone else to pin the blame on. The dog, my friend. I blamed many broken lamps on the dog. That sometimes, we don't mind just having our parents for company. I know what it's like to spend a whole day occupying myself. I think I can largely credit my only child experience with how creative I am. I spent time drawing or inventing stories with my toys, building things and dreaming. I think this general thought process has translated well to my everyday life problem solving and designing as an aspiring architect. I am great at socializing with adults, not so much my peers. Effed up part is when you become the adult, it's still awkward for some reason. Your parents will follow you to the ends of the earth. My mom is almost completely dependent on me for companionship because growing up it was only me and her. It's nice to be close, but now that I'm older and independent, it's awkward when she jokes that she wants to move in with me and my partner when I know a part of her is very serious. How you end up keeping toxic friendships with awful kids because it's better than being alone. All of your parents' hopes and dreams fall on your shoulders, and all of the responsibility of taking care of them when they're older. Add that if the person is from a stereotypical East Asian family, double damage. I remember a few years ago in English class we had to write a speech about whatever we wanted to talk about, as long as it related to the question, which was something like what bothers you that other people don't understand, to the class. I was the only child in that class of 27, and so I decided to write about what being an only child was like, and hope that by the end of my speech people would maybe not entirely change their opinion on the matter, but have a little bit more understanding. Having finished my speech in front of the class, I asked everyone at the end if they kind of got the concept now of how unlucky it felt to be in that situation. After a pause I was just met with laughter and choruses of whatever, you don't know how easy you have it, why are you complaining, etc. That was a crappy day. The pressure of being an only child, put on you by your family, parents. For example, the pressure to succeed, the pressure to take care of your aging parents. I'm a 35-year-old only child. No one understands how I can be loud and talk to myself when I'm, mostly, alone, and how quiet I am when I'm around others. I'm only child. Eat super slowly. Everyone I have a meal with comments that I eat super slowly. Wasn't until I had dinner with friend, eldest of 6, and her family that I realized the fight for food. We are not all spoiled, but we all wanted to be. You must be so spoiled, but I had to buy my own car, my own games, my own food for a time and help out the household because my family wasn't well off. Also, all for the chores that my friends would share with their brothers were all mine. My parents came from huge families, my dad a mechanic, my mom the daughter of a farmer, and with 5 acres to tend to I spent a lot of time doing yard work because no one, including my parents, understood that the kids' chores were only given to one kid. That my best company is my own company. I enjoy being around others and socializing, but I cherish the times when I again find myself all alone. You are the one to carry the legacy. You will be blamed for ruining your family or making it greater than it ever was. We also seem to be a bit more content with being alone and are a bit more emotionally mature due to only speaking to grown-ups our entire lives except for school and friends. At the same time we have trouble making friends a bit more, but that's more due to us looking for someone that's just as content as we are in ourselves. Surprised no one said this. The one perk is, dare I say, inheritance. When your parents die, there's no one else in the world who knows exactly how it feels. You're the only human being on the planet that knew those people as parents. You are completely, totally alone. That I need my quiet times. I don't mind being alone at times. I am used to it and nowadays I kinda need it. My girlfriend who has siblings had to get used to that. In the beginning she took it personal when I said that I preferred some time alone. Apart from that, this is a silly question. I don't know how my life would have been if had siblings. I would have been a very different person. One thing is that I probably don't really understand the sibling dynamic. How close or not close people are with their siblings. I really don't mind being an only child. It's the only way I have ever known. How much it sucks growing up and not having someone to play with you. Both my parents worked 2 jobs when I was a kid, so I had to make up games that I could play with myself or just kick a soccer ball against the wall. I remember I got a really cool Star Wars Monopoly game for Christmas one year, but then I realized I had no one to play it with unless I had friends over, so it spent a lot of time gathering dust. It did get better when I got a dog, but playing with a dog is not entirely the same as a sibling. The responsibility of taking care of one's parents. Most of my friends didn't understand what an undertaking it was when my mom got sick last year. I was her paw and responsible for all the decisions. I had to be available for everything. Court dates, meetings with social workers, hospice planning. Most of my friends have one sibling who could help out or they could tag team. I carried a case of documents in my car so if I was called when not at home I could look up answers. Also, trying to plan a funeral as the only one responsible is ridiculously stressful. I couldn't find a place to hold it. I spent 6 hours one day just calling places to see if there was a free spot. How incredibly lonely it is. I lived in a rural area where there weren't many kids my age to play with, and as an only child, I spent most of my time in my own imagination. I didn't have many friends, so I made up stories and stuff to help deal with the loneliness. If I ever have kids, I want at least 2 so they wouldn't have to feel that kind of loneliness. I find it hard to relate to other people, since you spend your childhood mostly alone or with parents and older people. That is until you get friends, and the idea of having someone on your level is alien. I found being an only child a very isolating experience, and for the longest time I wanted a sibling. I often wondered how different my life would have been. Would I have been any different? I definitely think I would have found it easier to make friends and be more social. It took me far too long to be able to fit in, and even then I forewent a lot of things I enjoyed to avoid being alone, like books, guitar and games, in favor of more extroverted social things like sports, events and drinking, etc. Even with all that, I find it far too easy to fall back into introversion. It's like slipping into a pair of comfortable shoes you haven't worn for a while. I also tend to find that people coming from large families have a sense of unity that an only child has to build for themselves. I had a poor family life, so I didn't think of myself as a part of something for most of my life. And when I compare my life to certain people who always have family to rely on, it used to make me sad. Despite it obviously being a wholesome thing, it did help me pick my friends more carefully as I got older, and even though it was a rough childhood, I can safely say I found my family who like me for my faults and don't necessarily enjoy everything I enjoy. The complete lack of social skill development. My parents basically let me do my own thing when I was little, and nobody I went to school with lived near me. It was just me and my PS2 for many years. There are some weird things I still do today that my fiancée will often point out. If she hadn't, I would have never noticed. The ability to isolate yourself totally from others. Forming shallow connections with people is easy, you have to be able to do that. Older people are usually much easier to get along with. That's all you've ever known. Forming deeper connections is incredibly difficult. You adjust to the voice in your head being a trusted advisor. Usually the only sounding board you have access to, and you know what? He's a bastard. You don't have the ability to look at anyone as being an honest to God nice person. You only see them working towards bettering their own position and probably screwing you over in the process. Things get interesting after you realize that isn't always the case. Some people are genuinely nice people. Old mate in your coconut promptly slams on the brakes and screams frickin' heck. What have you been putting in your guts? Your scone's gone rotten. Whilst the part of your brain that isn't psychotic pathetically wimp as well. I don't think so. I mean, every rational indicator actually says this person is a bloody good egg. Old coconut jumps back in with you frickin' nitwit. You know they're playing the long game. Must we do this every time? In short, I think growing up by oneself leads to unhealthy amounts of introspection, rumination, a destructive level of suspicion and an odd inability to deal with unpurposed interaction with people. That is sitting at a dinner table. What the ever-loving frick is with that? Only children of Reddit. What is something that people with siblings don't understand? I remember a few years ago in English class we had to write a speech about whatever we wanted to talk about, as long as it related to the question, which was something like what bothers you that other people don't understand, to the class. I was the only child in that class of 27, and so I decided to write about what being an only child was like, and hope that by the end of my speech people would maybe not entirely change their opinion on the matter, but have a little bit more understanding. Having finished my speech in front of the class, I asked everyone at the end if they kind of got the concept now of how unlucky it felt to be in that situation. After a pause I was just met with laughter and choruses of whatever, you don't know how easy you have it, why are you complaining, etc. That was a crappy day. As a fellow only child, frick that class. Yeah, there is some good, but just being alone a lot is something that people with siblings never have to deal with. The pressure of being an only child, put on you by your family, parents. For example, the pressure to succeed, the pressure to take care of your aging parents. I'm a 35-year-old only child. No one understands how I can be loud and talk to myself when I'm, mostly, alone, and how quiet I am when I'm around others. I'm only child. Eat super slowly. Everyone I have a meal with comments that I eat super slowly. Wasn't until I had dinner with friend, eldest of 6, and her family that I realized the fight for food. I'm an only child, and I inhale my food. My dad inhales his food too, and he picked it up from his dad who got that habit in the army. Lunch breaks for me are 5 minutes eating and 25 minutes on YouTube and Reddit. You must be so spoiled. But I had to buy my own car, my own games, my own food for a time and help out the household because my family wasn't well off. Also, all for the chores that my friends would share with their brothers were all mine. My parents came from huge families, my dad a mechanic, my mom the daughter of a farmer, and with 5 acres to tend to I spent a lot of time doing yard work because no one, including my parents, understood that the kids' chores were only given to one kid. That my best company is my own company. I enjoy being around others and socializing, but I cherish the times when I again find myself all alone. You are the one to carry the legacy. You will be blamed for ruining your family or making it greater than it ever was. We also seem to be a bit more content with being alone and are a bit more emotionally mature due to only speaking to grown-ups our entire lives except for school and friends. At the same time we have trouble making friends a bit more, but that's more due to us looking for someone that's just as content as we are in ourselves. Surprised no one said this. The one perk is, dare I say, inheritance. This is so true. It's crossed my mind a few times when reading crappy stories about how people's siblings screwed them out of their inheritance, that I will thankfully never have that issue. When your parents die, there's no one else in the world who knows exactly how it feels. You're the only human being on the planet that knew those people as parents. You are completely, totally alone. That I need my quiet times. I don't mind being alone at times. I am used to it and nowadays I kinda need it. My girlfriend who has siblings had to get used to that. In the beginning she took it personal when I said that I preferred some time alone. Apart from that, this is a silly question. I don't know how my life would have been if I had siblings. I would have been a very different person. One thing is that I probably don't really understand the sibling dynamic. How close or not close people are with their siblings. I really don't mind being an only child. It's the only way I have ever known. Yeah, seems kind of like balls that there are inherent differences between people with siblings and without. I'm the same as you. Need my alone time because I'm an introvert and I can't really handle people talking to me all freaking day. How much it sucks growing up and not having someone to play with you. Both my parents worked 2 jobs when I was a kid, so I had to make up games that I could play with myself or just kick a soccer ball against the wall. I remember I got a really cool Star Wars Monopoly game for Christmas one year, but then I realized I had no one to play it with unless I had friends over, so it spent a lot of time gathering dust. It did get better when I got a dog, but playing with a dog is not entirely the same as a sibling. The responsibility of taking care of one's parents. Most of my friends didn't understand what an undertaking it was when my mom got sick last year. I was her poor and responsible for all the decisions. I had to be available for everything. Court dates, meetings with social workers, hospice planning. Most of my friends have one sibling who could help out or they could tag team. I carried a case of documents in my car so if I was called when not at home I could look up answers. Also, trying to plan a funeral as the only one responsible is ridiculously stressful. I couldn't find a place to hold it. I spent 6 hours one day just calling places to see if there was a free spot. How incredibly lonely it is. I lived in a rural area where there weren't many kids my age to play with, and as an only child, I spent most of my time in my own imagination. I didn't have many friends, so I made up stories and stuff to help deal with the loneliness. If I ever have kids, I want at least 2 so they wouldn't have to feel that kind of loneliness. I find it hard to relate to other people, since you spend your childhood mostly alone or with parents and older people. That is until you get friends, and the idea of having someone on your level is alien. I found being an only child a very isolating experience, and for the longest time I wanted a sibling. I often wondered how different my life would have been. Would I have been any different? I definitely think I would have found it easier to make friends and be more social. It took me far too long to be able to fit in, and even then I forewent a lot of things I enjoyed to avoid being alone, like books, guitar and games, in favor of more extroverted social things like sports, events and drinking, etc. Even with all that, I find it far too easy to fall back into introversion. It's like slipping into a pair of comfortable shoes you haven't worn for a while. I also tend to find that people coming from large families have a sense of unity that an only child has to build for themselves. I had a poor family life, so I didn't think of myself as a part of something for most of my life. And when I compare my life to certain people who always have family to rely on, it used to make me sad. Despite it obviously being a wholesome thing, it did help me pick my friends more carefully as I got older, and even though it was a rough childhood, I can safely say I found my family who like me for my faults and don't necessarily enjoy everything I enjoy. The complete lack of social skill development. My parents basically let me do my own thing when I was little, and nobody I went to school with lived near me. It was just me and my PS2 for many years. There are some weird things I still do today that my fiancée will often point out. If she hadn't, I would have never noticed. The ability to isolate yourself totally from others. Forming shallow connections with people is easy, you have to be able to do that. Older people are usually much easier to get along with. That's all you've ever known. Forming deeper connections is incredibly difficult. You adjust to the voice in your head being a trusted advisor. Usually the only sounding board you have access to, and you know what? He's a bastard. You don't have the ability to look at anyone as being an honest to God nice person. You only see them working towards bettering their own position and probably screwing you over in the process. Things get interesting after you realize that isn't always the case. Some people are genuinely nice people. Old mate in your coconut promptly slams on the brakes and screams frickin' heck. What have you been putting in your guts? Your scone's gone rotten. Whilst the part of your brain that isn't psychotic pathetically whimpers, well, I don't think so. I mean, every rational indicator actually says this person is a bloody good egg. Old coconut jumps back in with you frickin' nitwit. You know they're playing the long game. Must we do this every time? In short, I think growing up by oneself leads to unhealthy amounts of introspection, rumination, a destructive level of suspicion, and an odd inability to deal with unpurposed interaction with people. That is sitting at a dinner table. What the ever-loving frick is with that? You just described me better than I could ever describe myself. Before marriage, why are you not married yet? Are you gay? After, why you don't have children yet? Do you want us to die without seeing the faces of our grandkids? Only child, only grandchild here. We are like unto a god, and you will bow to our whims. I like being alone, doing things alone for extended periods of time because that's how I learned. I don't mean a little alone time. I mean hours or days without anyone else around. It is very hard to learn to sleep with someone else in the room. I believe we also tend to be light sleepers, but that might just be me. I got really good at doing crap myself. So while I don't mind help in the kitchen or whatever, if you feel like you're in the way, well, sorry, not used to having to work around you. We hate conflict cause we didn't have to deal with strife over little things every day unless it came from authority. Also, we're good at dealing with authority cause it was basically our only option. Don't think we're not competitive because we didn't have siblings. We went at every task trying to beat the last person who attempted it ourselves. Also, friends are very important to us. Having no siblings to form brotherly and sisterly bonds with close companions are the next best thing. Everyone's like, oh, you must have been lonely growing up. I was alone, but not lonely. I loved it. I had my own room, my own toys and books and my own TV. I might not have been able to have all that if I had siblings. My mom had to have a bunch of surgeries just to be able to have me, and they spent a few years trying to have another one because they didn't want me growing up an only child like they did. I'm glad they couldn't have any more. A lot of people I know don't even get along with their siblings. Both my in-laws have no contact with their siblings, and if they do, it quickly becomes an argument. Frick that. I remember my mom being really upset once because one of my friend's moms told my mom that she is selfish for not giving me a brother or a sister. Yikes. The fear of your parents getting older dying. Regardless of your feelings towards your parents, once they die, that's it. Your immediate family is gone. You may have no one else who can reminisce about your childhood with you, and definitely no one to reminisce with about how your parents raised you. This can be made even worse if you didn't have much of an extended family, rarely saw them. Not only that, but you have no one to help you financially or emotionally if your parents' health starts failing or they need a lot of care. Like right now, I'm 29 and in a really crappy financial situation. And my mom is 70. I'm really terrified I won't have enough money within the next few years to support us both, especially if she has any medical issues. And my relationship with my dad is really crappy. I've not seen him in 4 years and he could die today and I wouldn't care. But people look at me like I'm a butthole because of that, and I'm really wondering WTF I'm going to do if his health fails because I'm not taking care of him. He has his own money though, so I could arrange to hire someone. Honestly, this entire post is super stressful just thinking about all of it. My brother died when I was 8, and then I began my venture into only childhoodism. The pressures to be this perfect, happy glowing ball of sunshine all the time led me into having a nervous breakdown by the time I was 16. Having been on both sides of the fence, I can tell you that the type of isolation and introversion experienced by only children is far more profound than by children with siblings. There is truly a sense of absolute desolation at times that no one else can console. I found it easy and natural to make friends as a kid before my brother died, and after it was like I had no safety net if somebody rejected me. I became very sarcastic, and still am, making friends mostly by seeing who else likes to be mercilessly picked on. Lovingly, of course. The pressure to have kids, to keep the family name going, to surround myself with a brood of youngsters who would never have to endure the same thing as I did, almost completely clouded my view for years of what I actually wanted in life as well. Parent of an only child here. After a lot of debate, we decided to stop at 1 kid. We aren't rich, and never will be, and it seemed fiscally irresponsible to have 2 kids. Reading these responses, I feel like I really fricked up as a father. The overwhelming opinion seems that be that so long as I'm an active and caring father, my kid will be fine. I still worry constantly about her social development, but I'm a bit socially weird myself and have 4 siblings, so clearly that didn't help. I'll continue to do my best to stay active in her life and ensure she gets into preschool and peer programs as soon as she's able. I see a lot of people talking about how they were bored or lonely. I loved being an only child. In fact, I cried and got mad when my parents asked if I wanted a sibling at the age of 7 or 8. I loved that I got everything, didn't need to share my stuff, never felt jealous of something they got that I didn't, and had 100% of my parents' attention at all times. I spent my time reading, playing video games, and going on the computer, and I never had to fight for time to do those things with anyone else. Being the only child also gave my parents the financial opportunities to give me a lot of experiences. I went to camps every summer at a younger age. Eventually I went on study abroad trips. We went on cruises a lot. Went to Disney a number of times. Had an awesome house with a pool and huge yard that all my friends wanted to come visit. If my parents had to pay for 2 or more kids, we probably wouldn't have been able to afford all that stuff. I think this also played a part in me being a well-behaved kid, because I couldn't blame it on anyone else, so I had to take full responsibility for everything I did. I very rarely got in trouble, and my parents trusted me with a lot of freedom. I also had a very close relationship with my parents, as they were my friends too, and I told them pretty much everything. I was never embarrassed to have them come on a field trip or show up at school. I am thankful for my parents, and I never feel like I missed out on anything not having a sibling. That you'll rarely hear your own name said in your house. It was just me and mum for most of my life, so there was never a need for either of us to say each other's names. I barely called to her mum. She rarely called me by my name. Only when I had fricked up did my name trail slowly and loudly up the stairs, with every vowel dragged out to punctuate the feeling of impending doom. Instead of using names, we just spoke, for example, "T, can we change the channel, go to bed, dinner is ready," etc. Also leftovers. I've noticed that people with lots of siblings don't appreciate leftovers in quite the same way me and my other only child friends do. This made me realize how weird I feel hearing someone call me by my actual name. My GF and I are both 25 and both grew up as only children. We both have half siblings we didn't live with or see that often at all, and compromise selfishness is the biggest issue in our relationship. It sounds ridiculous, but even such little things as who's choosing what we watch next can lead to big arguments, and we put most of that down to the fact we never had to compromise for anything as a child. So while we're old enough to understand that we need to compromise, it goes against our gut instinct and leaves a bad taste when we don't get our own way. We also have trouble with cohabiting at times, have lived together for 5-6 months now, because we are so used to being on our own at home and therefore having our own way, except for things our parents decided obviously. I definitely think we'd argue less had we been used to living with a peer, i.e. anyone that's not our parents, as small things wouldn't trigger us the way they do currently. My friends used to laugh at how much only child syndrome I unintentionally have, and I used to tell them they're making it up and it's not true. I'm now starting to reconsider, lol. I find that when my boyfriend wants to watch something I don't, we are both only kids, I find something else to do in the same room. Craft, play, wow, read. That way we are still hanging, but no one feels odd for doing something they like. Most people have that need for a familial bond, and without siblings, it's easy for us to put that desire, love and responsibility on our friends. We want you to be our siblings, but that's not fair to you, because you already have that. You just want friends. Those offsetting needs can create turmoil we ourselves don't understand until we realize what we are donning. Took a lot of therapy for me to realize this, and that it was just that my friends didn't like me much. When you get bullied at school, there is literally no one to back you up. Sure, having siblings doesn't automatically mean that they will be cool siblings, and having friends help too, but most of the time, there is no older sibling to show you the ropes in anything or any backup from any younger ones. It is almost always you, alone, against every scummy suckers in the world. This stretches all the way to adulthood too. Yeah, you're just you. You're no one's brother or sister. You're just that random kid who no one knows. You have to make your own way through life, which can be liberating, I think, and it teaches you to work hard. Just how lonely it can be. I never really had friends growing up. Interacting with my parents and other adults had me feeling like kids my age were immature. I never had to compete for their attention, and in some cases I am less independent simply because I knew my parents were there to help bail me out when necessary. Your parents have high expectations at first and they either eventually go away or you're a disappointment. It's also very lonely if you don't have a good relationship with your parents. Friends have always been my siblings. Growing up, I didn't have anyone to play with unless it was a friend or parent. but obviously my parents aren't the same thing. I've been lucky enough to have the best group of friends I could have asked for and they feel like family. As an only child I never learned how to play fight. Because of this I weirdly lack the skill of not using all of your power when play fighting with someone. I just go full ballistic and end up hurting the other person each time even though I don't mean to. I simply don't understand how to physically limit the amount of power I use. Also food envy. Horrible food envy. After a third date there's no way on earth we'll share that milkshake. You get your own. Everyone seems to be posting the negative, but there are positives too. I grew up as an only child in a not very well off family, but I got by just fine. You can have time to yourself whenever you want it. You never have a fight over anything if there's only one of it. You learn a great sense of imagination. Whatever your parents wouldn't have been able to afford two of, they only need to afford one of. So unless it's something huge, expensive and unnecessary, you sometimes get things you wouldn't have been able to otherwise. This actually worked well, because my parents wouldn't have been able to afford to send 2 kids to college, but they could afford one. Your parents never pick a favorite. No fighting over friends' love interests. No fighting over toys. No fighting over what to eat at night. No fighting over share this or that. Generally no fighting over anything. Usually the case without siblings, but nevertheless, a plus point. You can sit wherever you want in the car depending on where your parents sit. You tend to get more attention from your parents, as they don't need to split the attention. I'm sure there are other positives as well, but this was just what I could think of off the top of my head. Just wanted to show it's not all doom and gloom. A lot of it is just what you make of it. I'm from a huge family. I have one child right now with no plans to have another, at least not in the near future. Any tips from other only children how I can not frick my kid up too much? All the answers and tips really gave me confidence in the path I am helping my daughter go down. I feel I am parenting the best way for her and I am giving her a great opportunity to help her become a confident, adjusted and balanced individual. Thank you all. Don't wait until kindergarten to socialize them. I still remember that scary butt day where I first met kids my age. Up until then humanity had been kindly, old, full of candy and toys and wisdom. Harsh awakening to humanity. Kindergarten was. Seriously socialize the heck out of them. I'm still terrible at compromising and navigating through relationship troubles. That we didn't ask to be an only child. It wasn't our decision. That for a lot of us. The fact that we didn't have siblings is because our parents couldn't afford it. Whoa. Okay. I get it. We've all got our troubles. Lesson learned. Post without context, repent at leisure and all that business. In my limited experience, that is, a sample size of 1, I was always treated by my non-only child peers like I had an easy ride. I'm not trying to be victim. Just trying to answer the question. Go forth and be loved y'all. Or we were just accidents as I was literally told every day. I loved being an only child. I had a lot of neighbors and friends around me, though, so that probably helped. I grew up learning how to communicate with adults a lot faster than many of my peers, and I had a lot of support and attention from my parents that I noticed my friends didn't get as much. I wouldn't say I was spoiled, but I was aware that because I didn't have to share my things with anyone, I had, and still have, a slightly harder time understanding sibling relationships and the need to have to share everything with each other. I kind of love this quote about being an only child. I think the biggest problem working with me would be that I'm an only child, and so I have an internal dialogue that goes on that I just assume you can hear. Because as an only child, you have your own little world. Then you go into a situation where you're working with other people, and unless you actually vocalize what you're thinking, the other people will go through heck trying to figure out what's going on. Maynard James Keenan kind of gives some perspective on what a lot of folks in this thread are speaking to. Communication and socialization can often be a bigger hurdle for only children to overcome. The most what the frick moment with your siblings? I was an infant at the time. My mum and dad were still married. My brother is technically only my half brother, since he was from a relationship before my mother and my father's. There are many horror stories from when my brother was younger, but this one most directly involves me. So, my paternal grandparents were visiting and I was just chilling in one of those sorta egg-shaped baby seat things that you strap the kid into and they recline a bit. My brother was maybe 6-7, so he definitely knew better than to do what he eventually was going to. Grandparents and parents are sitting on couches nearby, having coffee and catching up like normal people do. My brother apparently left his Game Boy near me, and I'd picked it up and started turning it in my hands, like babies do with things they're unfamiliar with. I'll note this was in the early 2000s, so this Game Boy was one of the thick, red bastards that could probably knock someone's teeth out. There shouldn't have been any real genuine concern that a 6-month-old baby was going to damage it. Anyway, my brother sees me observing the Game Boy, and what's his response? Getting a pillow down from a lover seat and holding it over my face, literally leaning into it. My grandfather looks over, by chance, and sees my brother attempting sororicide. The old man, a bad diabetic no less, leaps to his feet, snatches my brother right off the ground. My dad gets the pillow off of me and holds me whilst my grandfather is bellowing with rage at my brother and most likely attempting murder himself. Had my mother not intervened and defended him, he did get his hide tandem like any child before though. TLDR. My brother tried to smother me when I was a newborn. Extra info, my brother and mother are much closer than her and I. I'm like 99% it was just because he was a neurotic and jealous kid. He and I are basically normal siblings now, although we did consistently attempt to slaughter each other when he was 16-17 and I was 10-11. Couldn't be left home alone with each other. SHHH no tears only dreams. Art's brother. My brother came home after his first week of college, snuck in the house while we were sleeping, unpacked and went to bed and woke up in the morning acting like he had never gone away to college. Refused to talk about it and acted like we were all crazy when we did. He was 10 years older than me so I was only 8 at the time but I remember my parents being very worried. He still won't acknowledge that he ever went to college. Not to point out the obvious but something definitely happened at college. Technically not my sibling, my sil. We went on a road trip with my husband's family including significant others. His half-sister, 18-year-old, was dating a woman she had never met from halfway across the world. She threw tantrums every day complaining that we were not giving her enough privacy for FaceTiming her girlfriend. She would FaceTime her in the car while we were driving to various activities or in the living room of our vacation rental. She had her own bedroom but said she shouldn't have to be locked away to be with her lover. Her words, not mine. She even told her dad and brother to stop using their 4G because they were using up all the data she needed to FaceTime her girlfriend. They actually got married about a year later. Funny thing is we all really like her wife. She's really cool, but I could take or leave my sil. My brother tried to smother me in my sleep. We shared a room and he had some problems but I woke up to him hovering over me with a pillow and I screamed. He pushed down and my mom rushed in. I slept in her room for the next couple weeks while we found him help. Oh dang. Once when my brother and I were teenagers, I walked into his room after hearing a strange knocking sound and found him completely naked, standing on a chair, and humping the door. It was by far the most awkward eye contact we have ever made. It finally clicked too when I realized that's how the closet door in the game room was coming off the hinges. My little sister, at age 11 was a foot taller than me at age 18. I was really small and sick at the time so couldn't really stand up next to her anyway. She used to beat me with household objects, push me around, lots of horrible stuff. Parents defend her as just mentally unstable. Yeah sure, general abuse isn't really the most WTF thing though. That's pretty normal. So, I was charged with picking her up from an after-school club called Brownies. She demanded I buy her an ice cream on the way home. I tell her calmly, no, that £1 is for milk on the way home. Mum has asked me to get it. She lost it. Called me lots of names an 11-year-old should not have known. Pushed me into the road, in front of a car, picked up the milk and walked home, leaving me there having just been hit by a car. She's now 17 and swears it never happened, even though I have the scars to prove both that and all the other times she hurt me or threatened me. The way she attacks me now is by stealing my money and stuff from my room. Parents still defend her and I'm starting to see why she ever acted like that. I regret ever moving back in with family. Start hiding loaded mouse traps in your drawers, boxes, under the bed or in anything anywhere that may be rummaged through. My sister took my copy of Pokemon Platinum and threw it out without me knowing because she was mad at me. That copy had a shiny Giratina on it. I was, at most, 4 years old. My little sister was 2 years younger than me. We were eating dinner at one of those Japanese restaurants where they cook the food on the table. Well, dinner was eaten. Time went on, and I was wondering if the table was still hot. So, using the only thing I could think of, my little sister's hand, I tested the table, and indeed, it was still pretty hot. The frick. Not my sibling but my mom's. It was my grandfather's funeral 2 days after he died. My uncle's wife of 5 years berated my mother because she was not mentioned in the obituary, screaming at my crying mother in front of about 75 people. My uncle supported his wife in doing this and thought it was appropriate. My grandfather's funeral 2 days after he died. The syntax makes this look like the title of a movie, a sequel at that. When my mum and brother broke the news to me that he was actually my half-brother, he was very intensely staring whilst waiting for my reaction. I asked why he was looking at me like that and he said, "Half looking at you," and winked. My sister was 8 years older than me. One night, I was maybe 7 or 8, we had been in her room late at night in a rare moment talking and getting along. We didn't hate each other, but our age difference was such that we were just kind of in different worlds. Something struck me as off about where our conversation was going. I don't remember the exact contents. It was 24 years or so ago at this point, but she was asking questions you should not be asking a kid my age. It was very sexual in nature. I made an attempt to go back to my own room, but she was super insistent I stay. She said I could just sleep in her bed with her tonight, that if I went back to my room it'd wake our parents up and they'd get really angry. But it felt wrong. So I just kept telling her no and that I wanted to go back to my room. I finally managed to, and we never spoke of it again. She ran away from home a year or 2 after that, and years later, committed suicide. So I never got to ask her about it. Not sure I would today if I could though, honestly. I hate to be the one to say this, and you might have already put 2 and 2 together, but it sounds like your sister was sexually abused as a kid. I was at my cousin's wedding, just watching everyone dance when I turned around and saw my sister-in-law standing over my brother. He looked absolutely defeated and she was reading him the riot act, jabbing her finger at him for emphasis. Both of them had been drinking, and I guess he had been doing something he shouldn't have been. After she left to go to the bathroom to cool down, and I asked him if everything was alright, he just gave me this world-weary sigh and said she's mad at me for no discernible reason. My sister had a nightmare when she was maybe 5 or 6 years old about raid. More specifically, it was raid, I kill children. She doesn't remember telling me about that nightmare, but every once in a while, I'm in her house and I see raid in the cleaning cabinet or whatever. I make sure to refer to it. The first time she looked at me like, "How did you know about that? Did you crawl into my brain and just know my childhood nightmares from 20 years ago?" The other time, she already had kids by that point and I said, "Careful of that raid. I hear it kills children." I remember when I was about 16 I was finally home from the hospital recovering from cancer. Don't remember what I was doing down there, but my younger brother, about a year younger than me, comes down and starts demanding I get him something from Amazon. Feeling crappy and not really up to it, I tell him in no uncertain terms no. This triggers some serious anger in this kid, and he starts yelling and throwing a tantrum cause I won't buy him the thing. And by some point I just wasn't going to do it out of principle. At that point he just starts hitting me, the emaciated, sickly older brother, in the back of the head demanding I do it now. In a speed I never anticipated, I jerk myself out of my chair and shove him backwards into the couch, where he rolls off of it and hits the floor. He spends the next 15 minutes there gasping for air and whimpering while I give actually zero fricks. Eventually he limps up and starts bitching me out for hurting him while I'm nursing some bruises. You best believe he got his butt reamed when the parents got home. Though, I still don't do many nice things for him. My oldest sister is basically scamming at church, to the point that the preacher there literally went and bought her underwear. Meanwhile she has the audacity to tell me, if I want to go spend my husband's whole check at a casino then it's nobody else's business but mine. This was where I said WTF. She longer comes to town because everyone hates her just because she's scamming at church, left to her mother to be cared for by an opioid addict, and is holding the land that my dad is supposed to have as ransom. The other day I was microwaving food and my little sister, who is 19, came downstairs and, without question or eye contact, took my food out of the microwave mid-cook and placed something she wanted in it. I was standing a few feet away from her and she just stood and stared at the microwave like I seriously didn't exist. Pretty sure I did say what the frick very loud. My sister stabbed me in the back with a screwdriver. Being the tough older brother that I was, anytime she would hit me or whatever I would tell her it didn't hurt. One particular day, I was playing with my kid-sized tools while we were fighting about something, so she hit me. Of course I told her it didn't hurt, because it didn't. That went on for a little while until she finally had enough and stabbed me in the back with a screwdriver. That one hurt. I used to collect troll dolls when I was a kid and would display them on my bookshelves in my room. I came home from school one day to find that my older brother had cut the hair off of every single troll. I remember losing my crap, crying uncontrollably. I'm sure he was punished at the time, but now we can all look back at that and get a good laugh. I didn't know how to swim, so when I was in a pool, I always hung onto the side. When I was about 9 and my older brother was 14, we were in a crowded public pool. He convinced me to step away from the side of the pool, push with my legs and propel myself back to the edge, convincing me I'd just float along the top of the water. I pushed with my legs, went forward very briefly, then nosedived to the bottom of the pool. I assumed my brother, who knew how to swim and convinced me to do this, would come down after me. Nope, I was wrong. After being down for about 15 seconds, and just as I was starting to panic and take in water, a hand reached down to pull me up. It was my uncle who saved me. My brother was about 10 feet away by the time I was pulled up. Certainly seemed as if he moved elsewhere intentionally as I almost drowned doing something he convinced me to try. He wanted to be an only child. I'd sleep with one eye open if I was you. While I was growing up, we had a lot of orange trees. One time, my brother was so pissed at my sister. I don't even know what the heck she did, but my brother thought she deserved to be cornered and have a rotten orange stuffed in her mouth. My sister fought as much as she could. I yelled at him to stop, but I was about 9 at the time. No one listened to me. He was pretty violent as a teen. I don't know who in their right minds justifies something like that. It's just so gross and random. For some reason I thought the tree was orange. Oldest of 5 boys here. To save typing and protect anonymity, I will refer to my brothers as 2-5. I hit 2 in the head with a brick. He hit me, so I decided a simple fist wasn't enough. We were 4 years old and 3 years old at the time. I borrowed a ladder to climb a tree in the backyard. 3 stole the ladder when I got near the top, so I had to fall out of the tree to get down. 4 lit his bed on fire with an incandescent lamp on a dare. We taught our baby brother how to say bulls at the drop of a hat. There are probably more. My mother went fully grey at 30, so there are definitely more. Once when I was a young boy, I was using the bathroom when my older sister walked. I tried to tell her to get out but she wasn't listening to me, and then she asked if I wanted to play tug of war with this broomstick, and since I was like 7 I went along with it. We started pulling and she pulled me off the toilet and then quickly sat down to use the bathroom. Pretty WTF if you ask me. That's honestly pretty hilarious. In the 90s there was rampant child abductions on the town I lived in, so city decided to put up checkpoints in and out of the city. Well, during one of these stops my little brother decided to mess with us and tell gendarmerie, army, police, that he did not know who we were or where we were going. Instead of believing me and my two friends, gendarmerie believed my brother and throw us in the jail until my dad came and got us out. Brought my little brother's id. I never felt that scared in my life. My sister grabbed the tampon she was currently using and threw it at my brother. My younger brother and I were sitting on the floor in our game room watching a movie. I was probably 12 and he was 7 or so. My older sister, 16, storms in and stands in front of the TV, screaming about something. Nothing out of the ordinary, and we try to just ignore her and let her rant. This continues until we ask her to move, and she refuses. I wish I remember what he said. I wish I could remember the comment that caused this catastrophe, but I cannot. My younger brother makes some offhanded remark, which makes her stop yelling, but she just stares at him fuming. She then, in one fell swoop, reaches up under her skirt, pulls her tampon out, and sidearms it at my little brother. Direct hit. Square in the chest. She storms out. I'm in shock. My brother just sits there. Screams followed. We've never mentioned it since. Throwaways since they're both on here. When we were teenagers, my cousin was doing a class project where he had to take pictures of certain things around town. One of them was in the lobby of the local courthouse. So he, my sister and I go there. They almost didn't let us in because we had a camera with us. This was before we were old enough to have cell phones, but it was for a class project, so obviously it was cool. We then asked the guards if we could go upstairs to the courtroom just to see what it was like, which surprisingly they agreed to as long as we didn't do anything stupid. So we go up there and my cousin runs up to the judge stand and sees a gavel, picks it up, and starts banging it on the stand yelling objection. My sister spends a solid 5 minutes taking pictures video of this while I laugh my butt off. Thankfully, that's the only time any of us have ever been in a courthouse. Somehow. When I was discussing the fact that our mother had put down over $5,000 in credit in my name without my knowing with my little sister, she mentioned that the way I was talking about mom was making her uncomfortable. Admittedly, I was peeing cursing up a storm, but I was pretty sure I was right to be at the very least a bit angry about the entire situation. Confused, I asked if it had been her, wouldn't she be angry? She replied, straight-faced, but mom never did that to me. Oh, well, frick me, I guess. I hope you reported your mother for fraud. Might be a little late to this party, but my brother told us his wife was leaving him during his last month of a tour in Afghanistan. How awful, we all thought. Then we asked more questions. Why is she leaving him? She wants to cheat on him. How awful. Wait, why is she cheating on him? She's afraid of him. Wait, why? Before he left for his tour they got into an argument where she tried to leave the conversation and he followed her and pushed her to the floor. When she tried to get up he pushed her again and she tore a bunch of stuff in her arm and had to go to the ER. How awful. Definitely a WTF moment. My sister was once caught trying to enroll me in the military. She was 15. It's my cousin, but we lived together growing up, so I think it counts. One time she and I shared a bedroom with one bed. We slept head to foot. The next day she described features of my penis to me and was asking about them. Not in a sexual way, just a curious one. When I asked her how she knew what my penis looked like, she said that when she woke up it was poking through my boxers and she looked at it. I was like, WTF, that's weird, and she said to calm down. She didn't want to bang her cousin, she'd just never seen one up close before. Increase the roll tide of this by 80% please, I'm trying to jerk the frick off here. I think I was 10 and my brother almost 13. He had hit puberty as was tall and much stronger than I was, and for a week he kept telling me he was going to kill me when our parents went away for the weekend. I had shot him in the eye with a BB gun a few days earlier and he was holding a grudge. Anyways, my parents leave and I get home from school and see my brother standing in the kitchen with a big steak knife. He proceeds to chase me around the house throwing multiple knives, some come very close to hitting me. After about 15 minutes of running I get tired and he corners me and says, "You're going to die." Dramatically pulls back knife as far as he can above his head and pinning me against the wall. I am a wreck, begging for my life, staring at his horrible huge knife. He brings it down the knife as fast as he can in a stabbing motion to the right side of my chest, but manages to turn the blade away and hit me hard with the handle. I scream. He laughs and leaves me on the floor to deal with my psychological trauma. 10/10 moment with my brother. One time I was walking to the back door with my sister so we could go outside, and we were completely engrossed in whatever we were talking about, and we went into the kitchen, past the fridge and rounded the corner to the back door when all we hear is a yell and something move above us, and our little brother comes crashing down from the pantry in a ninja kind of pose, but I guess he had caught his foot on something and ended up slamming against the pantry and crashed to the floor. We didn't know what to say or do. She emptied a 2-liter bottle of soda onto my brand new queen-sized mattress and didn't tell me because I ate the last of something. It was delivered that day and I didn't realize it until after a late night dance rehearsal when I went to climb into my brand new pillow top cushion firm mattress to de-stress that I was covered with a sticky mess. As someone who got a brand new expensive mattress last year for Christmas, this made me exceptionally angry. I was a high school junior and my parents were out of town. Thought it'd be cool to throw a little party with some friends, alcohol included. We had 1/2 gallon of alcohol for a party of like 10-15 people. My sister was at a girls outing with her volleyball team at the coach's house. There was a person at my party that skipped their volleyball party to come hang out. My sister decided to call my aunt and rat on me for having a party. We were literally sitting in my basement, being quiet. 0% chance anyone would be able to tell there was a party going on. My aunt randomly showed up at my house and she ended up telling my dad I threw a party. It really hurt my relationship with my parents for a little while. Was grounded for 2 weeks. A year later, my sister let some guy drive her car drunk, while her and another friend were drunk in the car. I didn't say anything to my parents, but god dang did I hold that one against her. She is one of my best friends today, but I always bring it up to her just to troll every once in a while. Serious, what's the worst part about being the older sibling? For me, being almost 10-19 years older than my siblings, it's when they forget that I'm actually their grandchild. My parents were young when they had me, and then they split up, and then met new spouses and had new kids. Oh, let's take a photo of everyone except Jiz because we forget about him. I just transferred X amount of money to all my grandchildren, except Jiz because he is an adult. It never really bothered me until my girlfriend said something, but now it kind of does. I feel like I'm forgotten a lot of the time. I do well for myself, and have no need for their money, but it's nice to be noticed sometimes. Watching your younger sibling take your old stuff and practically destroy it because you're too old for that and they don't know how to take care of things. You watch your parents become less and less strict with your younger siblings and you watch them do things you were never allowed to do. I thought being the oldest had its perks, but recently I've only been able to notice all the responsibility and chores my parents push on me. Even while I am taking online classes for college, it's my fault if stuff isn't done while they're at work. Don't get me wrong, I love my parents, but they can do some ridiculous things. Yes, same here. Even when a younger sibling is at home and doesn't have classes, you still need to do the majority of the work. You're the one forced to include your younger siblings in things, which is a social burden, and you have no one older than you to stick up for you and emulate being more mature. In high school I had friends that knew exactly what to expect from applying to colleges, visiting colleges, and some of them even attended college parties with their older sibling. Meanwhile I was applying to college on my own, paying application fees out of pocket, and I had to bring my 11-year-old brother with me anytime I went to the diner, mall, or movies with my friends. They pretty much stopped inviting me at one point. I guess I'm lucky enough to have siblings close enough in age to me that when I bring them along to gatherings or parties, they actually branch off on their own and socialize. I can see how your situation was awkward. You are the assistant parent, and anything the younger siblings do gets blamed on you, because you didn't set a good example for them. The worst is that I'm expected to be great. I'm expected to have my crap together. I'm expected to be the bigger person. I'm expected to support myself. My younger brothers are not. That even when I have needed help, I'm still expected to have my crap together and be perfect, have a job, pay rent, pay more rent when it's found that I have money left over, etc. But not my brothers. Definitely, I was expected to pull myself up by my bootstraps and earn my way through life. My sister had her car insurance paid for, had her goals funded, got to coast her way through college, and even now, when her and I have an argument, my parents expect me to be the bigger person to get it resolved. I was the target for a majority of the abuse I received at the hands of my mother. My sister had me to protect her. I didn't have anyone. Being expected to be perfect to set an example for your younger siblings, and being compared to your younger sibling. Like yeah, it's usually him being compared to me, but then I feel bad because I hate being compared to other people, so I don't see why he wouldn't. You get blamed for pretty much anything and everything, and when you try to defend yourself it's always an OHH is your little brother sister. My sister and I are about 2 years apart. Overall we got along pretty well. We shared a bedroom till I was about 14 and she was 12. We had a single mom, so she couldn't afford a place till I was on high school, so we could have our own rooms. The one thing I absolutely hated though, my younger sister loved dolls. Me? I never wanted a doll. Not even a Barbie doll. But my sister had so many. She's get them as gifts for years. She even got this creepy standing doll that stood in the corner of the room. It didn't have a face. She had one of those toy canopies to hold the amount of dolls she had. But could I get a mini disco ball and a lava lamp? Number. I had to pick just one. I can kind of see the lava lamp, since those things can get pretty hot. But at 14, you were certainly old enough to take basic safety precautions. If your mom didn't think you knew what those were, she could have just explained it to you and checked up from time to time. Feeling like a failure when your younger sibling is more successful than you. I'd be a lot more okay with where I was at if my sibling didn't own their own home and make more money. Loving your younger siblings immensely and wanting to take care of them and give them a better childhood than you had, but also dealing with the fact that taking care of them means accepting your own parentification and sacrificing part of your own childhood. I'm 100% convinced that the reason I don't want to have kids is because I was the emotional clutch to my youngest brothers and I had to take care of them my entire teenage years while my parents went to work. The youngest had really bad anxiety and I had to console him for hours at night because he only trusted me. It's been years since this happened and I'm still burnt out. You're basically the test subject for both your parents and your siblings. Do you know why did my mom never let my brother just cry without giving a dang? Because when she did that to me I would just cry for hours and hours without stopping until she just appeared and yelled me to shut up. Do you know why did my brother never responded on a mean way to my mom? Because when I did it she slapped my face so hard she opened my lip and made me bleed. I just don't know, I feel I'm not the good one. Just a small practice before actually having a real family. Geez, sorry to say this but your mom was a C based on this comment. Being responsible for keeping the family intact. It's on you to host holiday gatherings and sort out issues amongst siblings. You're also responsible for your parents' well-being as they age. Somehow I feel that you will get the short end of the stick when it comes to inheritance. You start becoming a parent to your siblings and your parents rely on you to continue doing that. My siblings see me as more of a mom than my mom. They openly say it. It sucks. And when your mom hears it, it's your fault, haha. That's what happened to my friend and she still pee at her mom. You're the one who gets all the rules and the micromanaging all through your childhood. By the time the others come along, parents are tired and just don't give a crap what they do. Being pressed into free babysitting servitude. But personally, probably the worst part is that it was always my plan to get the frick out of Dodge as soon as I could. And I followed through. I got my first job at 16 and got my first apartment at 17. After I left, my siblings got really close with each other and at this point, it kinda feels like they've always been the only two and I'm some weird cousin they keep in touch with on Facebook. It kinda feels like I don't have siblings at all. I feel some type of way about this. I have 5 siblings all younger than me. Your points are a major factor in my childhood. Getting left with a bad mood. X. Hey Mo. What, I am in the middle of something. Younger sibling. Hey mom. Yes Angel, and the only thing that keeps me alive, what is it darling? Bulls. For us 4 it's the top one always, LMAO. Had to get the best grades, be a role model, be responsible and share my things. Even as we're older I'm the one buying gifts and checking in emotionally while they never learned how to do anything for me. Being the executor, my mother has numerous medical conditions, any one of which could cause her death or cause her mental state to become unhinged. Because of this, my mother had her will laid out 11 years ago, at 38 when I was 20. Occasionally she even updates it. Anytime serious surgery is performed, I get a message. All things considered, it's not horrible. However, being acutely aware of the mortality of my mother is not the most pleasant of things. Same. My older brother passed away some time ago, making me the oldest and in charge. I always get the calls about updates and am the one to go take care of our mom when she needs it. I don't resent helping her of any of that stuff, but I do hate the helpless feeling from seeing her mortality right in front of me. Having to act perfect all the time because you're supposed to be a role model for your younger siblings. Like sometimes it feels like you have no room to freak up because everyone is watching your every move. I feel like I can never talk about my feelings to anyone because within 2 minutes of the conversation it will derail into a conversation about my poor brother. Look, I know my stepfather is a douchebag and he is affecting my brother, but I have freaking problems too, but it seems like the only person anybody cares about in my family is my freaking brother. Things go wrong when all of a sudden you have to look out on the 24/7 and they go crazy like they're on drugs running around pee you off while you're sitting mature. And of course the classic, person is young so it's not his fault. Also the fact that your parents will make you not allowed to do anything. Like you have to sleep at like 7 PM and then there is your young siblings who stay up till like 1 AM and go crazy till they fall asleep. Especially the fact that they won't freaking leave you alone. Basically being the guinea pig so my siblings can see how something worked or didn't work for me and they can do it or steer clear. For me, it was my mom's unprocessed childhood trauma. She was the middle of 3 sisters, then grew up to have 3 daughters of her own. Her older sister bullied and abused her, and she feels that her parents took her sister's side more often and instead punished my mom for screaming. She projected her lifetime of resentment onto my relationship with my middle sister. My sister was actually extremely mean and bullied both me and our youngest sister, and my mom wouldn't punish her for it. I was bullied in school and hated seeing her do that to my baby sister, so I'd step in and punish her myself. And then my mom would accuse me of being the bully. My middle sister would also intentionally bait me into retaliating to get me in trouble. She'd make little quiet comments or do other things to wear away at me until I finally snapped. And you guessed it, I'm the bully again. I accept responsibility for my abusive behavior toward my sister and I feel horrible about it. I accept that we will never be close because I ruined that possibility. But at the same time, my mom played a huge part in this relationship dynamic too. She showed clear favoritism toward my sister because the middle child has it so hard and she seems to view older sisters as inherently abusive and mean. I had no jealousy or ill will toward my sister until my mom started with this crap. I used to play with her, read to her, teach her things, take care of her, until my mom started giving her all the special treatment and letting her off the hook for everything. By trying to even the score, she achieved the exact opposite. My mum was the middle of 3 sisters as well, and had a lot of issues about that. She took a lot of it out on me, as the oldest, and therefore I must be just like her older sister. My sister, the middle of 3, we had a younger brother, is her favorite, and is treated very differently. You're older, you should know better than to say the word stupid to your sibling. Do it again and we're taking your phone. They're just young. They don't know better than to invade your privacy, steal your stuff, tell you nobody wants you alive, physically hurt you and hit us when they don't get their way. We already talked to them and they said they won't do it again. With the amount of truth in this comment you could almost chuck it in the Bible. Having things you still like being passed down to the other younglings because you're too old for that now. Entire Pokemon binder, first editions, base set, jungle, movie promos, showdownless, gone to younger brothers. They decided to trade them for a copy of Super Smash Bros. 64. Not a bad trade in those days. Only we didn't have an N64. We had a Sega Genesis. They tried to make it fit and work. It didn't. Broke the system. Blame it on me. Mom believes them. My fault. Mom buys them a PlayStation. I'm not allowed to play it because I broke the Sega. Save up money from babysitting. Buy GameCube when it comes out. Love it. play the crap out of it. It's mine. Mom gives to youngest brother because he wants to have one. Thanks mom. What's the worst thing? The whole you need to grow up and do bigger kid adult things. Years later, as an adult with a career and family, my 2 youngest brothers are just starting to get their crap together. One is doing better than the other that has been in and out of jail ever since he moved out. Joined the military for the sole purpose of getting away from all of that, and it's worked out so far. I don't do any of that crap to my oldest daughter and her 2 younger siblings. I also had my collection of cards given to a younger sibling only for them to give most of it away to their friends. It still hurts to think about. You basically become another parent-free babysitter to your younger siblings, and at the same time you get to see your parents figure out use better parenting methods for your younger siblings that you never got. You seem to get all the parental failures as they figure out how, and your siblings get it easier. I bought my first car, my 3 siblings got them handed to them. Paid my way for everything extracurricular. Had to wait till a certain age to do something. Then younger siblings were allowed to do it at the same time, without having to wait. Example, my sisters are 2 and 3 years younger than me. I had to wait until I was 10 to be able to jump off our boat in the middle of the lake we would vacation at without a life vest. My sisters were allowed to do it at 8 and 7 years old because I was able to. I freaking hated it, and now I have issues with everything being fair and even. I use a scale to measure out portions of food so that I know that my husband and I are getting the exact same amount, down to the gram. Similarly, I had to wait until 8th grade to get a phone. My brother got it in 7th and my sister in 5th. On the outside it doesn't seem like a big deal, but that unfairness is a huge deal to me and messes with me sometimes still. So I have a younger sister and I have to watch her and her reign of chaos. The worst part is that whenever she does something dumb while we're home alone, it's suddenly my fault because I didn't stop her, or I need to set a good example, and even if neither of us freak up I don't get paid anyway, because apparently since I'm her older sister, I'm automatically responsible for her. Also, she copies me all the time. Everyone says that imitation is the simplest form of flattery, but not at the extent where it becomes annoying. Whenever I have friends over, mom makes me include her in literally everything I do with my friends. And, trust me, I really don't want to be showing my friends some of my latest adult show theories or fan fiction and have her peek over my shoulder to ask me what banging someone means. Then mom goes, OMG, how could you even be talking about that? You're way too young for that, so now you're grounded with no electronics for 375701788658901 for 2 years. I hate being an older sibling as I should not argue, yet sometimes I need to correct my sister and make a good point to make sure she understands things, yet I get told off as it is classed as arguing. Also, everyone thinks I am the liar, as in she could call me names throughout the whole day and I can go, can you stop calling me names? Then my sister goes, why are you lying? And she is off scot-free and I get told off as it is wrong. About the names, she makes fun of me every day and it's really freaking annoying. Yet as the older one I should ignore her and deal with it. I have issues with depression, so her torment, I hate her and can't wait to leave the house and never see her again. Before anyone calls me a little b, I am 15 and she is 14, so only a year difference. I believe she is seen as the favorite child as she is also given more respect. Dude, I'm in the same situation as you. Me and my sister have a 2-year difference. She always makes fun of me and tries to argue with me. I know what you're going through. You know your parents favor them, but they always deny it even though you have hard proof. My theory is because your mom knew what to expect from the second pregnancy, she wasn't hurt as much and they resent you. I have found the phrase I love you all equally, just not at the same time, to be true. LOL, my parents' favorite changed multiple times during my childhood. You are stuck with most of the chores, and if your parents are new to or bad at parenting, then you don't get as much attention when it's needed. For X, you're having a bad day and want to rant to someone but they're busy taking care of the baby. Being the firstborn child, growing up during the satanic panic, all of a sudden it's no more cartoons and we gotta take away your toys cause it's witchcraft. Then later, around 16 years old, you come home from a movie to find all of your CDs stacked up and a hammer next to them all because your little brother found a cigarette hidden somewhere in your room. Better get to smashing cause all of these albums are of the devil. All the cool stuff that you had goes to them, which isn't a bad thing. But when you have a vintage box of 1990 NASCAR racing cards that almost all of them are signed and your parents force you to give it to your younger siblings, and you wake up one day later and almost all of the cards are missing, broken, ripped, or are full of creases, so no money for you when you turn 20 and those cards are worth thousands of dollars. Totally not speaking from a personal experience or anything. Being beaten by my younger sibling and not being allowed to fight back. Instead, take a deep breath, relax, and calmly ask your sibling to leave. They don't? Well, ask again, cause if you touch a hair on their heads you're punished, while your sibling can grab scissors and throw them at you, and the best you'll get to see is a mild scolding. A note to people who think that family should always support each other: there is no legal or moral obligation for me or anyone else to support their families if they do not wish to. They have lives of their own. Blood does not dictate your life, or whoever you choose to be with. Offer some of your free time too. No one will see this, but I'll comment anyway. 1. You always have to be responsible for them. If they frick up, it's your fault. You get blamed for everything they do wrong. You can't have fun, you can't make mistakes, you can't put a step wrong because you have to set a good example. 2. You can't have your own life. You have to do every single thing with them. If you try to do something by yourself, it's why don't you take them along? Do it with them. If you try to free yourself just a little, you're guilt tripped by your sibling and your parents. Nothing you ever do can truly be your own. 3. You're the guinea pig. You get to be the result of countless parenting fuck-ups, and they have perfect parents, and you came from the same dang people. It hurts a lot more than people realize. Plus, your parents let them get away with everything you'd have been slapped for. They get the freedom you could only dream of. 4. Because you're always having to be the mature one, it becomes ingrained in you to always be mature and responsible and serious. You're always the one ruining everyone's fun. You can never completely let loose even once you get the freedom to do so. You'll never be carefree like your siblings get to be. You go through your whole life with the anxiety that comes from always having to be the mature one and never being allowed to show your real feelings. 5. Your parents tend to lean on you for emotional support because of your maturity. Your siblings lean on you because you're the oldest. Who's there for you when you need it? Nobody. At least not in your family. 7. Probably the most important, you are so goddamn unappreciated. Your parents simply expect you to be a little mini adult for your siblings. Your siblings? They've grown up carefree as the younger ones, but they still think they've got it bad. They complain about their oh so horrible life as the younger sibling to you, when their life is literal paradise compared to yours. Everything else would be so much easier if everyone actually appreciated everything you do for them. But they don't. They don't even notice. And I wish I could say it didn't bother me, but it freaking hurts. More than anything else on this list. You have to watch your younger sibling complain about how so and so sucked in their childhood, but you almost always had it worse. Being thousands of miles away from home and having your little sister call you during the night crying because she feels like a total failure in the eyes of her parents. I love my sister, and I feel lucky to have my parents, but if this ever happened it would break my heart. My 51F younger brother, 43M, thanks me for teaching him how to read. He calls me his real mother. It's bittersweet to know that I gave up my childhood to raise a good man. My lil bro forces me to do stuff. I would always help him all the time. If I needed something he would make an excuse saying, but I'm tired. I can't do anything right now, just so he won't do it. He would cry if I get mad at him. I'm a middle child, and I have 3 kids and my oldest is 10. I know I could be a better parent. I'm reading some of these comments and seeing some of my behaviors in them. First off, I'm sorry, and second, thank you. I hope to not make the mistakes that you're describing with my oldest. I appreciate all of your honesty and candor. I hope you can gain some solace that one dude is going to take to heart a lot of what you all said. Thank you again, this was a great question. My friend has 3 younger siblings, each a few years apart, and one of his biggest complaints is that growing up, he could never get out of the baby child stage of culture. Want to watch a sitcom? Nope. Time for Barney. Listening to popular music in the car? Nope. You get Raffi. Want to go out to an action movie? Nope. What's Disney got out this year? Being the second parent, I'm a middle child, so I'm constantly being the parent for all of my siblings. I was taught from a young age to care for children, and looking back at it, it's messed up. Younger me thought it was normal, but the more I looked at it, I wasn't supposed to do that. My parents are busy people and they always told me to do things and not complain. But to be thankful, I was 6 taking care of my younger sister, 2 years at the time. I'm a junior in high school now and I've learned how to put my foot down. Because I am older I should be taller, which I am. Since our dryer has broke, we have a clothing line. We have not fixed our dryer yet, and probably won't for a good while. Still, I have to hang laundry outside and it takes normally around 10-20 minutes to hang it, and my mom shouldn't do much. I have to do everything by myself. And it does not help at all that my younger sibling is super overdramatic, so she'll be least of any help at all. Last week I did 95% of the work and that was on myself. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.